The vector brush and the pixel brush are two very similar tools but can be used in very different ways. So today let's talk about the difference between them and the benefits and drawbacks of each of them, as well as personally what I use each of them for. Alright, let's start off with the vector brush. So within Affinity Designer, down the side, you've got your vector brush, which if you click on that, will open up your vector brush. You'll have the circle, which when you paint, you will paint a nice brush stroke. Now a key thing with this brush is that if we go into the node tool, we can actually see these points and we can readjust this line as many times as we like. We can bend it a little bit further if we want. We can bring it across. We can edit this after the fact, even after we've drawn it. We can even, if we want to, change the color of the stroke. If this was a complete shape, it'd look better, but we can even add a fill to it as well. So it's a dynamic shape that we've created. Now what this is really good for is because these lines are made using mathematical formulas and some kind of voodoo. When you zoom in, no matter how far we zoom in, this line will always be straight. But no matter how far, because it's using formulas and not pixels, the line will always be straight. So it's great for things that are going to need to be resized, things like logos or line work, for example. So no matter how far you zoom in or how far you zoom out, well, it's pretty hard to see, but I promise you those lines are straight. Now this brush is only in Affinity Designer. I think it's also in Publisher as well, but it's not in Photo at all because it is a vector-based image. So it's perfect for Designer. So again, if we went into this and we can readjust this again if we wanted to, we could bring this down. We could even close this loop together if we just hover over the end and start point. You'll see they'll snap together at some point. There we go. And let go. Now these points are actually connected. So now we've got a complete shape if we wanted. But we can select multiple points, move them across. So the huge benefit of this is that you can re-edit the lines that you make no matter how many times you want to. Alright, so let's move on to the pixel brush tool, which is actually called the paintbrush tool in both Affinity Designer and Affinity Photo. Now to get to this one within Designer, you head over to the pixel persona. Then down the side, you've got the paintbrush tool. Now if we select this, we'll again have the same setup that we had before. And if we paint, we'll paint a stroke. And again, we can paint as much as we want, but this is more like a traditional paintbrush where no matter how many lines we make, they're set on the canvas. Now we can, as a whole, move this around, but we can't actually use something like the node tool. Seeing as there isn't one in the pixel persona, we can't readjust these lines again and again. So a huge downside of the pixel brush is that you can't edit the lines after the fact. Now you can, in some cases, kind of skew the lines and readjust them using other techniques, but it doesn't actually keep the quality of the lines. So you do lose a lot of it and it does distort the images quite a lot. And because the pixel brush, like it says in the name, uses pixels to create the line, when we zoom into here, you'll see that there is a very, very harsh edge and you can physically see each individual pixel because it's using the pixels to paint the brush. And if we compare it, so if I actually bring this over and then we'll recolor this. So here, this dark red, we've got our vector brush, and then the light pinkish salmon color is the pixel brush. Now, if we zoom into these, you can clearly see there is quite a big difference. And we've not even gone zoomed in that far. So you can see the pixels right there, whereas this one is still a smooth line, voodoo. So it retains its quality even at a different size, whereas the pixel brush does distort. Now the only way that you can edit the pixel brush is to use the eraser tool by simply erasing where you don't want and then repainting it back in. But if you don't like that, you've got to undo, paint it again, undo, paint it again, undo. So this paintbrush is used for things that aren't often needing firstly to be edited over and over again, but also for things that don't need to be scaled. So oftentimes digital drawings or paintings use the pixel brush because they stay at a standard size. But personally, what I use the pixel brush for is to create things like shadows. Now say for example, we had this circle here and I wanted to make it a bit more three-dimensional. If you want to see a video on the 3 ways that I make shadows, you can check the video at the top. But if I wanted to quickly just add a shadow to this and I knew that I would keep this at the same dimensions, I wouldn't zoom in or zoom out or anything like that, I could use the pixel brush. What I could do is reduce the opacity, reduce the flow, reduce the hardness, and then just kind of brush over this, give it a little shadow. If I wanted to, I can add a bright spot as well, just to add a bit more of effect. But the problem with this now is that I have to keep this at this size, because if, let's say, I scale this whole circle up, you can see that it does actually distort quite a lot as you scale it up. So I'd have to keep this at this size. Even scaling it down, you can see that the actual effect becomes a lot darker because all those pixels get pushed together and just merge into one. So primarily I'd use the pixel brush for things like digital drawing, painting, shading, anything like that. Anything that once it's down, it doesn't need to be changed over and over. And if it does need to be changed, then I'll just redraw it instead. Whereas the vector brush I may use for more line work and drawing. And because there's these extra features of smoothness that you can use in stabilizer, you can actually make quite smooth lines with the vector brush compared to a freehand of the pixel brush, making it super useful for things like line work, especially if you're going along the outside of some line work that you've drawn with pencil. So basically, to sum up, vector brush, great for making lines that need to be edited over and over again. Pixel brush, great for using for digital drawing and shading. Can't be edited as well, and it's much easier to, instead of editing it, just redoing it. Vector brush uses voodoo. Unconfirmed, but in my opinion, voodoo. Whereas the pixel brush uses pixels, which can clearly be seen when you do zoom in. And one last thing that the vector brush does is no matter how many times you paint something, it creates it on a separate layer. So each line that I have created becomes a different layer that I can then re-edit and do again. Whereas this pixel layer is everything is done on one layer. And if I wanted to change anything, I'd affect everything that's painted on that one layer, unless I physically made another pixel layer myself and then drew something on and then made another layer, drew another thing, and so on and so on. So if there's one thing that you need to take away from this, is that the vector brush is highly editable, whereas the pixel brush is more for painting. Hence why it's called a paintbrush. But anyway, I hope that's made it a little bit more clear of what the difference is between the vector brush and the pixel brush and when to use which one. I mean, it's entirely personal preference. You may end up using the vector brush for things like shading, and it would be quite difficult to do, and you might find it a bit fiddly. So if you're ever in a situation where it's becoming too difficult to do it with one specific brush, try the other one. You might find it being a lot easier, and if that's the case, then that's the right one to use for that situation. But otherwise, that's all I've got for this video. Like I said, hopefully it helps. Any problems, any questions, drop them in the comments below. If you want to follow me on any other socials, those are in the description below. And as always, I've been BrownBear. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.